Welcome back to the Trading Post. This is me and Noodle again. He's yawning. He must be bored. Am I boring you, buddy? Anyways, we're going to be doing episode 16, The Mothman. Hope you guys are ready for this one. Just give me a break. Give me a second here, and I'm going to put little guy back up. You want to go back up, buddy? Huh? Okay. All right, everybody. Hope you're ready for this one. We're going to go ahead and do our Wikipedia information we got. Go through that, and we're going to go ahead and try and touch up on. There's a lot on this one. But we're going to go ahead and try and get through it, all right? Okay, Mothman. In West Virginian folklore, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15, 1966 to December 15, 1967. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16, 1966, titled, "Couples See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something." The national press soon picked up the reports and helped spread the story across the United States. The source of the legend is believed to have originated from sites of out-of-migration sandhill cranes or herons. The creature was introduced to a wider audience by Gray Barker in 1970 and was later popularized by John Keel in his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, claiming that there were paranormal events related to the sightings and a connection to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. The book was later adapted into a 2002 film starring Richard Gere. There is an annual festival in Point Pleasant devoted to the Mothman legend. On November 15, 1966, two young couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Maletti, told police they had seen a large black creature whose eyes glowed red, standing at the side of the road near the TNT area, the site of the former World War II munitions plant. Linda Scarberry described it as a slender, muscular man about 7 feet tall with white wings, and said that she was unable to discern its face due to the hypnotic effect of its eyes. Distressed, the witnesses drove away at high speed and said that the creature flew after their car, making a screeching sound. It pursued them as far as Point Pleasant city limits. During the next few days, other people reported similar sightings after local newspapers reported it. Two volunteer firemen who saw it said it was a large bird with red eyes. Mason County Sheriff George Johnson commented that he believed the sightings were due to an unusually large heron he termed a shitpoke. Contractor Newell Partridge told Johnson that when he aimed a flashlight at a creature in a nearby field, its eyes glowed like bicycle reflectors. Additionally, he blamed buzzing noises on the television set and the disappearance of his German Shepherd on the creature. Okay. Wildlife biologist Robert Smith at West Virginia University told reporters that descriptions and sightings all fit the sandhill crane, a large American crane almost as tall as a man with a 7-foot wingspan, featuring circles of reddish coloring around the eyes. The bird may have wandered out of its migration route and therefore was unrecognized at first because it was not native to the region. Due to the popularity of the Batman TV series at the time, the fictional superhero Batman and his rogues gallery, or villain gallery, were prominently featured in the public eye. While the villain Killer Moth did not appear in the show, the comic book influence of both him and Batman is believed by some to have influenced the coinage of the name Mothman in the local papers. That's interesting. Following the December 15th, 1967 collapse of the Silver Bridge and the death of 46 people, the incident gave rise to the legend and connected the Mothman sightings to the bridge collapse. According to Georgian newspaper Svobodnaya Grozia, Russian ufologists claim that Mothman sightings in Moscow foreshadowed the 1999 Russian apartment bombings. The Mothman Prophecies in circa 2002 is a major motion picture loosely based on the 1975 book of the same name by John Keel. In 2016, WCHS-TV published a photo purported to be of Mothman taken by an anonymous man while driving on Route 2 in Mason County. Science writer Sharon Hill proposed that the photo showed a bird, perhaps an owl, carrying a frog or snake away, and wrote that there is zero reason to suspect it is the Mothman as described in legend. There are too many far more reasonable explanations. Folklorist Jan Harold Brunvan notes that Mothman has been widely covered in the popular press, some claiming sightings connected with UFOs and others claiming that a military storage site was Mothman's home. Brunvan notes that recountings of the 1966-67 Mothman reports usually state that at least 100 people saw Mothman, with many more afraid to report their sightings, but observed that written sources for such stories consisted of children's books or sensationalized or undocumented accounts that fail to quote identifiable persons. Brunvan found elements in common among many Mothman reports and much older folk tales, suggesting that something real may have triggered the scares and became woven with existing folklore. He also records anecdotal tales of Mothman supposedly attacking the roofs of parked cars occupied by teenagers. Conversely, Joe Nickell says that a number of hoaxes followed the publicity generated by the original reports, such as a group of construction workers who tied flashlights to helium balloons. Nickell attributes the Mothman stories to sightings of barred owls, suggesting that the Mothman's glowing eyes were actually red eye effect caused from the reflection of light from flashlights or other bright light sources. Benjamin Radford points out that the only report of glowing red eyes was secondhand, that of Shirley Hensley quoting her father. One of the prevailing hypotheses associated with the Mothman at the time of the original sightings was that it was a misidentified sandhill crane, due primarily to the size of the bird as well as the reddish flesh around the crane's eyes. Daniel Reed examined the migration patterns and historically reported sightings of sandhill cranes in the area of Point Pleasant, and proposed that in cases where eyeshine was not noted, it was statistically more likely that witnesses were seeing and misidentifying a great blue heron instead. According to University of Chicago's psychologist David Gallo, 55 sightings of Mothman in Chicago during 2017, published on the website of self-described Fortean researcher Lon Strickler, are a selective sample. Gallo explains that he's not sampling random people and arcing if they saw Mothman. He's just counting the number of people that voluntarily came forward to report a sighting. According to Gallo, people more likely to visit a paranormal-centric website like Strickler's might also be more inclined to believe in and therefore witness the existence of a Mothman. Some pseudoscience adherents, such as ufologists, paranormal authors, and cryptozoologists, claim that Mothman was an alien, a supernatural entity, or a previously unknown species of animal. In his 1975 book, Keel claimed that the Point Pleasant residents experienced precognitions, including premonitions of the collapse of the Silver Bridge, UFO sightings, visits from inhumans or threatening men in black, and other phenomena. Okay. That was a lot. Anyways, yeah. I don't know what that noise was, but whatever. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go through this here. Now, okay, the location of the Mothman is in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, as said prior. Point Pleasant may seem on the surface an ideal little town at the confluence of the Kanawha and Ohio rivers. The scenery is spectacular and the surrounding countryside is essential. True, Point Pleasant has seen far better and more prosperous days, like many once bustling towns lining the country's major waterways. Underneath Point Pleasant lies a supernatural reality. Nearly everyone in town has at least one story to tell about a spooky encounter with a ghost or unknown creature or mystery lights in the sky. In the mid-60s, the supernatural underbelly of Point Pleasant exploded like a volcano, spewing forth creatures, aliens, spaceships, ghosts, poltergeists, men in black, giant birds, and other phenomena, and one of the most famous creatures now in the world, Mothman. More than 40 years now, residents and investigators alike still shake their heads and ask what on earth happened in Point Pleasant and why. There are a few answers to either question, but for 13 months from 1966 to 1967, the mid-Ohio River Valley was gripped by bizarre sightings and events. Point Pleasant was at the epicenter. The cast of characters came straight out of the Twilight Zone, and the star of the show was a huge gray humanoid with wings, no marked head, and glowing red eyes, set straight into what a person would be the shoulder blades. Christened Mothman, a bit of a misnomer, for it had no resemblance to a moth. The creature would rise up in the air like a helicopter without flapping its wings, and fly at high speeds, with or without flapping its wings, even though the sound of wing flapping was sometimes heard. Witnesses were terrified, and wannabe witnesses flocked to areas where the entity had been spotted in hopes of catching a glimpse. Some were armed, intent on capturing it dead or alive, but Mothman eluded them as mysteriously as it manifested, leaving behind not a speck of evidence. Since the bizarre wave, Mothman sightings have been reported all over the world. Okay. The most thorough investigation of the saga was conducted by John Keel, who participated in the unfolding events during the wave and who later had some alarming ideas of his own for explanations. The evening of November 15th, 1966 was cold and clear. Two young married couples who lived in Point Pleasant were out on a lark in a desolate TNT area located on the Ohio River off Route 62, about 6 miles north of town. The TNT plant, officially known as the West Virginia Ordnance Works, was constructed as a munitions manufacturing site in 1942. The facility originally covered 8,323 acres from 1942 to 1945. Some 720,000 tons of TNT were produced each day there. The TNT was stored in bunkers called igloos, all built above ground. Underneath was a honeycomb of tunnels. The production led to significant ground and water contamination. After the war, the facility was abandoned and portions of it were sold off. In 1966, the plant was a favorite with couples who liked to park and neck. On this night, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Milletti were out looking for friends and chasing parkers, as Linda Scarberry related much later in an interview with Donnie Sargent Jr. Roger was driving in his 57 Chevy. They made the rounds through the igloos without success and headed back to the unlocked gate at the old generator plant. They went over a small rise in the road, and the car headlights caught something that made Roger slam on his brakes. Illuminated in front of them was a slender but muscular man-like creature, 6 to 7 feet tall, with huge round eyes, wings, and large hands. It had no definable head. The circular eyes looked more like they sprouted from the shoulders. The eyes, about 2 inches in diameter and about 6 to 8 inches apart, stared at them with hypnotic intensity. The creature was gray, or as Linda described much later, flesh-colored with ashen wings. One of its wings appeared to be caught in a guide wire near the road, and it pulled at the wing with its hands. Later, Linda thought the creature was frightened, but in the heat of the moment, it was the occupants of the car who erupted in fear and panic. While they screamed, the creature wiggled its wing free and wobbled with an old shuffling gait into the generator plant through an open broken door. Roger hit the gas and tore out of the gate onto the road, heading for Route 62 back to town. Suddenly, the creature was in sight again, standing on a little hill, as though it had instantly teleported itself. The car headlights struck it again, and it spread its 10-foot wings and took off straight into the air. It began following the car, matching its speed. Roger pressed the gas pedal down harder and harder until they were flying along Route 62 at 100 to 105 miles an hour. The creature effortlessly kept up, banging down on the roof of the car 2 to 3 times as they fled. It made a high-pitched squeaking noise like a mouse. Reports differ as to whether the creature flapped its wings or not. Somehow, they careened down the road and its dangerous curves without mishap. As they grew closer to the bright night lights of town, the creature peeled off. They saw it once again crouched on the Ohio River flood wall, its legs and wings tucked in. Roger drove to the Dairyland, and they tried to calm down and decide what to do. They could not agree on whether or not to report the creature to police, and they argued over whether or not they would be labeled as crazy or drunk or both. A decision was made to return to the TNT area, but part way back, they decided against it. When they turned back around, they saw the body of a large dead dog by the side of the road. According to one of the witnesses, the winged creature jumped out at them as they passed the dog, went over the top of the car, and went through the field on the other side. Back in town, couples decided to notify the police and told their story to Deputy Millard Halstead. Seeing their genuine fright, Halstead took them seriously. He got in his patrol car, and the two vehicles went back to the TNT area. The body of the dog was missing. There was no sign of the red-eyed monster. But when Millard turned on his police radio, a strong garbled sound screeched out at high volume, as though someone were playing a tape recorder at fast-forward speed. Little did they know it, but this was the first of many manifestations off odd phenomenon to happen. Linda and Roger were rattled that they stayed up all night with the lights on. Linda had trouble sleeping at night. The next day, the couples went back during daylight and found some odd-looking tracks resembling two horseshoes put together but smooth. Also, the next day, Sheriff George Johnston thought the incident needed a press conference. The Scarberrys and Millettis made themselves available for interviews. One of the reporters was Mary Heyer, who wrote a popular column for the Athens Messenger in Athens, Ohio, called Where Waters Mingle. Heyer sent her story to the press service. The Mason County bird became famous. Some anonymous editor or writer named it Mothman as a takeoff on the then popular and campy TV show Batman. Within 2 days, hundreds of cars full of eager people swarmed out to the TNT area and the nearby McClintock Wildlife Sanctuary at night in hopes of seeing Mothman. The atmosphere was strange. Worried, the police estimated that every car full of people had at least one gun. The debunkers were quick to jump in the fray, and the media were happy to oblige. One report claimed that the monster was nothing more than a huge gas-filled balloon released by students doing air current experiments. The debunker who got the most notice was Dr. Robert Smith, an associate professor of biology at West Virginia University, who said the creature had to be a sandhill crane, which stands 4 to 6 feet tall, has a large wingspan, and red feathers around its eyes. Never mind that the sandhill crane was a rarity in West Virginia, or that its overall shape bore no resemblance to the humanoid creature, which described by witnesses. Other explanations were that it was a shippoke, which is a type of heron, and even a creature that flew down from the moon. Okay, as feared. Oh shoot! Hold on, it's here. As feared, the original witnesses were ridiculed and accused of being drunk or on drugs. Point Pleasant is a religious community, but not a single minister called them to offer counseling. One minister laughed at them, Linda Scarberry said, and commented that the devil had been run out of their church, and that was the creature they saw. The Scarberrys were plagued at home by weird sounds at night, beeping noises, and something like a tape recorder being played at high speed. The noises became so disturbing that they left their trailer home and moved into the basement of Linda's parents. More people reported encounters with Mothman. One of the most terrifying of them happened on the night of November 16th, just barely 24 hours after the Scarberrys and Millettis had the fright of their lives. Marcella Bennett, her 2-year-old daughter Tina, and her brother Raymond Wamsley, and his wife Kathy had decided to visit family members who lived near the TNT area. They had read about the strange being in the newspaper, and they even thought it might be fun to go out and look for it. They paid a visit at the home of a sister and brother-in-law and decided to depart around 9 p.m. They walked out to the car, and Marcella in front holding a cigarette and her car keys and holding little Tina in her arm. Raymond was the first to see the creature coming toward them out of the sky. Brilliant lights filled the area. Marcella kept on walking toward the car, oblivious to Raymond's shouts to stop and return to the house. She started to unlock the passenger door, and as she looked down, she saw a man's legs that looked like they were covered with gray feathers. She did not see any feet. Like a slow-motion horror film, she pulled her eyes up. Standing only a few feet away from her was a giant birdman, its head sunken into the shoulder area and tilted to one side. She saw no red eyes, but later said she might have been too frightened to notice. Marcella thought her life was over. She had never before seen anything so monstrous. Raymond screamed at her to run. Marcella turned and took 4 steps and fell down on top of Tina. She felt paralyzed. She thought the creature would scoop her up by her back. She heard the sound of flapping wings. Marcella was at last able to rise and stumble to the porch with her daughter. She was skinned, bruised, bleeding, and burned by having also fallen on her lit cigarette. They all rushed into the house, where the children inside were screaming and crying in panic. Raymond called the county sheriff's office. It took about 15 to 20 minutes for deputies to arrive, while Mothman lurked outside the house, causing more terror. It came up on the porch, pushed on the door, and looked into the windows. But the creature was gone by the time the deputies got there. The officers searched the area and found nothing. Marcella was so traumatized that she could not sleep. Somehow, she felt the creature now had a link to her and would come back. After several days, she went to the hospital and was treated for shock. She was unable to drive at night. Once she had to go pick her husband up for work late at night. Suddenly, she was certain that it was in the back seat, and she nearly wrecked the car. There were more and more sightings night after night on both sides of the Ohio River. They were all remarkably similar of a tall bird man with red eyes that rose straight up in the air like a helicopter. On November 27th, 18-year-old Connie Jo Carpenter saw the man-like, awful-looking creature flying toward her car on Route 33 near New Haven at about 10:30 p.m. In St. Albans, about 40 miles south of Point Pleasant, 2 girls saw a flying creature with big red pop eyes. Even pilots reported the creature. 5 pilots at Gallipolis Airport said they saw a winged form at about 300 feet elevation around 3 p.m. on December 4th. It was traveling at about 70 miles per hour without flapping its wings. This creature seemed to have a long neck, and it turned its head from side to side. Many of the sightings were near the vicinity of the TNT. Every night, cars of armed hunters and thrill seekers continued to pour through the area. Another major hotspot was the Chief Cornstalk Hunting Grounds, or currently Chief Cornstalk Wildlife Management Area, which is 11,772 acres near Gallipolis Ferry, West Virginia. Okay. Now, we've got a little bit more here, you guys. Okay. The Kanawha River from Point Pleasant, though dozens and dozens of sightings were reported, Keel documented 26 that he considered to be the best and most responsible. One was from Mississippi on September 1st, 1966, in which a flying humanoid was seen at a low altitude in the vicinity of the town of Scott. After the big news broke about Mothman, others came forward with accounts of earlier sightings on November 1st. National Guardsmen at the Armory near Camp Conley Road in Point Pleasant saw a brown humanoid figure perched in a tree. On November 12th, 5 men preparing a gravesite for a burial near Clendenin saw something that looked like a brown man with wings lift off from the trees nearby. On November 14th, glowing red eyes were reported in Salem, West Virginia. Complicating the sightings of Mothman were reports of huge, unusual birds on both sides of the Ohio River. One of the creatures was Birdman, an owl-human thing that favored lonely creeks in Kanawha, Roane, Mason, Jackson, Wood, and Braxton counties. Birdman was shiny, reddish feathers, a human-like head, and a wingspan of about 12 feet. Appalachian folklorist James Gay Jones documented a wave of birdman sightings around the turn of the 20th century. The huge man bird with reddish feathers that glistened in the sunlight made appearances just before or after tragic events in Point Pleasant. Around World War I, the creature was seen flying over Looneyville, up Johnson Creek, and down Gabe in Roane County, and down the Elk River, down the Elk Valley into the Kanawha, Jones has said. Parents forbade their children to play outside. Another wave centered along the Ohio River took place after World War II in the late 1940s. In the latter wave, some witnesses said Birdman chased them in their cars as they drove in the vicinity of the Ohio River. In Mason, Jackson, and Wood counties, when the Mothman wave commenced, Birdman sightings were mixed with Mothman reports and may have created some confusion. Some sightings were of giant birds. Tom Missouri, a resident of Point Pleasant, was driving on Route 62 just north of the TNT plant on November 25th at about 7:15 a.m. when he saw a huge grayish bird in the air that zeroed in on his vehicle for a few minutes. It circled the car, drawing closer and closer. Uri gauged it to have a wingspan of about 10 to 12 feet. Uri was not the only person seeing odd birds instead of humanoids. Strange birds were reported as far away as Pennsylvania and up to 70 miles away in Ohio. Mothman alone would be enough for the record books for mysterious creatures, but almost immediately and even preceding the Scarberry-Maletti encounter, area residents were subjected to more phenomena. In fact, the mid-Ohio Valley became the focal point of a full-blown high strangeness wave, with Point Pleasant at the center. High strangeness is a term used in ufology to describe the secondary phenomena that often accompany sightings and encounters with alien lights, crafts, and beings. Witnesses already disoriented from their primary events become even further disoriented in a landscape of poltergeist activity, apparitions, men in black visits, odd phone calls, electrical disturbances, nightmares, shadow people, missing and mutilated animals, and more. All of these things happened during the entire run of the Mothman wave. People who actually saw Mothman suffered more high strangeness than others. It was as though they were now on some strange radar targeted for monitoring. Others plagued by high strangeness included researchers, investigators, and persons who took strong interest in penetrating the mystery. UFO activity began prior to Mothman's first known appearance. The most dramatic case to hit the headlines was Woodrow Derenberger's meeting with an alien named Indrid Cold. The initial incident occurred on November 2nd on Interstate 77, outside of Parkersburg at about 7 p.m. Derenberger was heading home to Mineral Wells south of Parkersburg from his job as a shoe salesman in Clarksburg. A craft materialized and landed on the interstate, forcing him to stop. A tall, slim, man-like entity emerged and came to his car and conversed with him telepathically. Indrid Cold explained his people meant no harm and that he would be in contact with him. Derenberger's encounters with Cold resumed 2 nights later when the alien came to his house. When news got out, Derenberger was an instant celebrity and people camped outside his home in hopes of catching sight of a real extraterrestrial. Cold told Woody that he was from a planet called Lanulos in the constellation Ganymede. There is no such constellation, at least in our reality. But Derenberger got launched into an alternate reality that ultimately isolated and alienated him from others, including his own family. The most famous missing animal of the Mothman wave was Bandit, a German shepherd belonging to Newell Partridge, near Salem. On the night of November 14th, Bandit became agitated and the Partridge home was filled with electrical disturbances and odd sounds. Partridge went outside to see why the dog was howling and shined his flashlight into the darkness. The light picked up 2 odd eyes that did not seem to be animal eyes. Bandit took off and was never seen again. The next day, he found the dog's tracks by the barn as though it had chased something in circles. Was the dead dog seen the next night by the Scarberrys and Malettis the body of Bandit? The carcass mysteriously vanished soon after it was seen. That's odd. John Keel spent a great deal of time in Point Pleasant during the wave, documenting the sightings and high strangeness and having some of his own experiences. Once he checked into the motel without a reservation and found a phone message waiting for him. He teamed up with Mary Hyre, and the two went out at night to watch the strange lights in the sky, especially near Gallipolis Ferry. He was in frequent contact with Ivan Sanderson and Gray Barker. Keel received phone calls from entities claiming to be aliens who had prophecies about world events and disasters that were going to happen. When he returned to New York City, he was fed messages of prophecies and predictions from sources all over the country. One message predicted a power failure all over the country on the night of December 15th, 1967. Something did happen this night, but not a power failure. On the aforementioned evening at 5 p.m., a traffic jam occurred on the Silver Bridge, spanning the Ohio River at Point Pleasant. The bridge was completely loaded with trucks and cars, mostly majority of Christmas shoppers. Traffic was at a standstill, apparently because of a faulty stoplight. Suddenly, an I-beam on the bridge failed and the structure started to sway and twist. It collapsed into the river, sending 40 cars and 17 trucks into the icy water. 46 people lost their lives, and one of them was the nephew of Raymond and Kathy Wamsley. His name was Marvin Wamsley. Within an hour of the disaster, 12 UFOs were spotted over the TNT area. The emotional shock sent the entire community reeling. Nearly everyone in Point Pleasant was affected by the tragedy, losing a friend or a relative, or knowing others who suffered losses. Premonitions about the bridge collapsing, people drowning, and packages floating in the river had been experienced for months. Mary Hyre herself had a premonitory dream during the aftermath. Some people tied the Mothman wave to the collapse. Mothman became a harbinger of doom. The trauma seemed to shut off most of the paranormal activity, which dropped significantly in the wake of the collapse. Today, people are divided over whether Mothman had anything to do with the bridge collapse. Okay, let's see here. That'll be that. Well, y'all, what do you guys think? You know, what do you think it is? Do you think it's a multi-dimensional being? Do you think it's like a ghost? Do you think it's actually a humanoid alien of sorts? Is it a human from the future? Is that what we look like in the future? I mean, what? Shit, who knows? You know, there's a lot to cover there. I mean, I'm going to do an actual episode on the Indrid Cold one in the future here. I just can't do that right now. I don't want to extend this longer than it already is. But I hope you guys like this one. You know, my respects go out to all those that lost family members during that bridge collapse. That's sad. That's a horrific thing that happened. And as you'll see on the beginning of this video, you'll see a picture of the bridge. I got you some photos on there that I could put up there, some newspaper clippings and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys will have it'll be something interesting for you to see. But yeah, it's crazy how all that stuff had happened the way it has, you know, and then, you know, you got to figure there was that rash of sightings in 2017 in Chicago. I mean, the thing is it a harbinger of doom? You know, is the Mothman like coming around when something bad is going to happen? Is he causing it, or is he actually trying to prevent it from happening and just failing? I can't say. I don't even know what to think on that, but it gives you pause for thought, doesn't it? Yeah, like they was even talking about the Batman comic. You know, they come out with the bad guy, the villain, Killer Moth. You know, maybe that had something. They're suspecting that might have something to do with them finally calling it Mothman, dubbing it Mothman. Who knows? I don't know. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we're gonna be doing some other ones here coming up. I'm gonna be doing stuff like Some of the ones I have upcoming, I have some local legends I want to do. And I'm going to do local legends from around the world too, just to get that clarified ahead of time. I want to do local legends from around the world, but anybody that has a legend that's local to them, you can send it to me if you want. And we'll go ahead and look into that. We'll do some research on it and try to, do justice by that story. I plan on doing all kind of stuff. I mean, I'm gonna do one on Dyatlov Pass. I'm gonna do the Spartans, the 300 frequencies, how they affect you. Edgar Casey, the Jersey Devil, Shadow People, Ghosts, Zombies, Time Travel, Multiverse, Teleportation, Psychokinesis. Just to name a few. I mean, we're gonna do some popular figures and stuff. I'm trying to get better at how to jump from one thing to the other. Do a cryptid or something, and then do maybe like a conspiracy on a famous figure or something. I'm gonna try and still do my comedy skits and stuff. I'm gonna try and put some of them out there, so that'll give you something to maybe laugh at or have fun or whatever. We're just on this channel to have fun. We're gonna entertain ourselves. We're gonna try to learn while we're doing it. But yeah, we're going to do one on Men in Black. We're going to do one on, I'm going to try and do some of the current events too. Maybe even do like a small little like news thing, and we'll talk about the current events or something. But let me know what your opinions are on it and what you think would be nice to do. I mean, hey, you got a good idea, we can go with it. I'm not afraid to listen. That's what I'm here for, to listen. So let's try and get this stuff sorted out. We're gonna go ahead and get everything good to go. Thank you guys for being faithful followers and tuning in and checking this stuff out and enjoying it. Hopefully you're learning stuff from it. I know I've learned stuff on every episode I've done. Every one of them. So if you guys have a chance, you want to comment, you want to tell me what you want me to do, like as far as historical figures and stuff. And I'm going to do people like, Billy the Kid. I'm going to do Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp, Tombstone itself and what happened in the events of that. Different stuff, We're going to talk about old lost treasures that haven't been found, like Wild West treasures and things like that. I got to dig into that. I got to try and find some information on different ones of those. But we're gonna get into it. We really are. And we're gonna have fun doing it. I apologize, you guys. I have a full-time job and I work very hard. So trying to find a time to do all this, it gets a little tight, but I love doing it, so I try to make the time to do it. So you guys have a great one, okay? That's the Trading Post. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.